The Sparrow's due was older than anyone aboard her, and she let them know it. Paid off twice, mortgaged 3 times, and the number 2 hatch still stuck in its track the way it had stuck since before Rourke ever owned her. He set his shoulder to it, the way he did every shift, and it swore at it, the way he did every shift, and it gave with a groan that ran through the whole frame. Under his boots, the deck pushed up soft and steady, a third of a gravity on the torch, the engines humming up through the plates and into his teeth. Down was wherever the engines were. He'd stopped feeling it as anything but home a long while ago.
Spite,
he told the corridor.
That's what's holding her together. You could bottle it and sell it.
The galley answered him the way it always did, with the smell of scorched coffee and hot metal and air that had been breathed too many times and scrubbed too few. A cracked pressure gauge by the hatch had been taped back to true a decade ago, and the tape had outlived the hands that did it. Bolted beside it was a contract slate with the current haul chalked up in the rigger's blocky script, and under that, half rubbed away, the ghosts of 40 jobs that had come before. The Sparrow's due did not so much fly as remember how. She had carried 3 generations of hungry men out past the lamps and brought most of them home, and she made a man feel the cost of it in every seam. Out here past the fold limit, 3 months' burn from any lamp that mattered, the dark was the best money in the galaxy, and everyone knew it. Salvage was a gold rush, and the field was open. You put a cheap hull and a hungry crew out past the shallows, and you came home rich or you didn't come home, and either way somebody was already fueling up to take your berth. Every station on the rim had grown a second, louder self in the last 10 years, brokers and outfitters and men who'd never worn a suit selling maps to men who would, the whole dark repackaged as a fairground you could get rich just walking through. Nobody who sold you the ticket ever mentioned the ones who didn't walk back out. There was no percentage in the mention. Rourke had been coming home for 19 years. This haul, if the numbers held, was the one that let him stop, 41,000 clear, and the note was paid. And the chair was somebody else's problem. He was a hair short. He was always a hair short. He came up the ladder into the flight cabin. The rigger had the boards, a Vesk, all angles and patience, 6 limbs working 4 panels while the other 2 stayed folded, and it did not look up when he came in.
How's she running?
Rourke said.
She is running,
the rigger answered, and the translator boxed it flat, 1 note, no music in it at all.
You will ask me that until we are docked. I will say the same thing. This is our arrangement.
A limb tapped the range plot.
Last one, you said?
This is the last one.
You have said last one for 11 years.
The rigger's monotone did not change. It never changed.
I keep the count. It is a long count.
Keep it shorter,
Rourke said, and it was the oldest joke they had, worn smooth as a coin. 11 years he had flown with the thing, and in 11 years they had learned to run a whole dive on a dozen words, an anchor called, an angle named, a danger priced and paid, all of it in the flat-clipped shorthand of 2 people who no longer needed the sentences in between, the same voice it used to keep the count. Rourke could not have said he liked the rigger. Liking was not the shape of it. It was nearer the way a man feels about his own left hand, unremarkable, wholly relied upon, noticed only in the instant it is gone. He was still grinning at the joke when wind ducked through the hatch. The kid was on his first real haul, and it showed in everything, in how he touched the walls like they might be worth something, in how he'd already named the coffee maker. Rourke caught him by the collar ring as he passed and put a thumb to each of the boy's suit seals, 1, 2, 3, a check the kid hadn't asked for and pretended not to need.
They're green, Rourke. I did 'em twice.
Then they'll be green a 3rd time?
Rourke said.
Humor an old man.
When I've got my cut,
Wynne said.
I'm buying a room with a window. A real one? Not a screen. Somewhere with weather. You can come sit in it.
He said it like it was already true.
Windows leak,
the rigger said to no one. Rourke didn't tell the kid that windows leaked, or that weather was mostly a thing that tried to kill you, or that a real one cost more than a first haul cut would ever clear. He'd had the window speech himself once, a long time and a lot of hulls ago. He just ran the arithmetic he always ran. The haul, less the note, less the lamp the boy had cracked back at Farron, less the 1,000 small bleeds a ship this old took out of a man and came up, the way he always came up, a hair short of done. One more. This one, maybe, if the wreck was as fat as the tag swore. He had thought that before, too. They came up on the derelict, slow, dark, and passive, lamps down, the way you approached a thing that big, and it was big past reckoning. It hung against the starfield with no lights of its own, a shape the eye kept trying to finish and couldn't. A hull like a range of mountains laid on its side, seams that ran the wrong ways, angles that met and did not agree about meeting. Down one flank a breach had opened and frozen, and the edges of it were not torn but poured, glassy and smooth, as if the wound had happened slow enough to cool. Nothing about it acknowledged them. It had never once been meant for anyone like them, and that was the part that got under the skin. The rigger had gone quiet at the boards, not the working quiet, the other one.
I do not like the reeds off her.
It said at last, flat as ever, and could not be moved to say more because there was no gauge on any panel for the thing that was wrong, and the rigger did not spend words on what it couldn't put a number to.
Everything is nominal. I do not like the reeds.
Would you look at the size of her?
Wynne breathed.
Don't look. Work.
Rourke's voice had gone quiet, and he didn't know he'd done it. He cut the torch, the floor let go of them all at once, and the cabin went to the float, and he pushed a hand to the overhead and felt his stomach settle.
Set anchors. 2 on the spine, 1 aft of the breach.
The rigger fired them. Rourke felt each one land as a knock through the deck, the hard point punching into the ancient hull, biting, the tether paying out and drawing taut until the Sparrow's dew rode against the wreck on 3 straight lines of tension instead of her engines, free station keeping. Fuel was money, and money was the whole point.
Silence in,
the rigger said.
Silence in.
Rourke agreed, and kept about a third of it the way winners did. He and Wynne crossed on the guideline, boots to the poured glass lip of the breach, and then into a dark that swallowed the helmet lamps whole. No air out here, no sound but their own breathing over the link and the small tools clicking against the suits. The corridors were scaled for something that was not a person, too tall, too wide, the proportions of a cathedral built by hands that had never heard of people.
Rourke!
Wynne's voice came hushed over the link, the way a man talks in a church he has broken into.
Rourke, the walls. There's writing on 'em, or there was. It climbs up past where the lamp will reach.
Rourke tipped his own lamp up the impossible height of the corridor and let the beam climb until the dark ate it whole. Somewhere over his head the geometry did the thing it kept doing, meeting itself at an angle his eye reported and his gut refused.
Not on the manifest,
he said.
Not our problem. Eyes down, hands working.
But he had stopped too, and they both knew it. Deep in, on a low plinth in a room that had no reason to be lit, they found it. It sat by itself, cupped in a cradle that seemed poured to fit a human hand, though nothing human had made it. Inside it, a single thread of gold light lay coiled and slow, breathing, brightening, dimming, brightening like something asleep and dreaming. It was a thing made to be looked at. Wynne's lamp shook on it.
This one's perfect,
he said.
Not a scratch on it.
That's the buyers,
Rourke said.
Rig the plinth, we lift the whole...
You are still a lamp short.
The rigger cut in over the link, flat and patient.
The one the boy cracked at Farron. It comes off the top.
It comes off his cut,
Rourke said.
It comes off yours. He has no cut yet.
A pause. One note.
You are 40 and change. You are always 40 and change.
It was an old fight, this one, worn near as smooth as the Count itself, and neither of them meant a word of it. The lamp at Farron would come off the top, or off Rourke's cut, or off nobody's at all, and they both knew which. And running the numbers at each other was only a thing their voices did while their hands stayed busy, the same as the Count, the same as the sticking hatch, the same as every other thing 11 years had rubbed down to habit between them.
I'll clear it this run,
Rourke said.
Watch me clear it.
I am watching. It is a long count.
And there was almost something in the flat of it, almost the shorthand of 2 people who had been short of money together for 11 years.
I just want to see it work,
Wynne said.
One time, just to see.
He put his glove on it and woke it up. The link cut. Rourke's voice a step behind the boy, half turned and already reaching.
Wynne.
Stopped. Not garbled, not screamed. It simply was not there anymore, mid-word, the way a lamp is not there when the switch goes. At the console of the Sparrow's dew, the rigger sat with the dive team channel open and heard the nothing land. Its boards were green, every one of them. Air good, lines taut. The derelict holding steady on 3 anchors, no fault on any panel it could name. The rigger had planned 100 dives with Rourke in 12 words each, and it knew the sound of a bad one, and this was not that. This was worse. This was the sound of a line that was open and had no one on the other end of it.
Rourke.
It said into the channel, flat, 1 note. Nothing answered.
Rourke, say something. Say the count is wrong.
The monotone climbed a hair, then more, the first inflection it had ever spent, 6 limbs going still on the boards as it rose half out of the chair toward the open channel. The word broke off in the middle of itself. And the ship's hum went on, up through the empty chair, up through the plates and the still limbs and the green untroubled boards, the low even hum of the Sparrow's dew, running, not noticing, carrying on alone in the dark with no one left to hear it. The hum held under it a moment, then the card and the hum went out together, and there was black, and there was quiet, and nothing at all came to fill them. Colvane Station never stopped turning, and that was where the floor came from. The docks were a great slow ring, and down was the pull of the spin outward toward the hull, steady and honest. Trent liked that about it. Spin was physics, and physics didn't lie to you. Half the station ran on physics, and the other half ran on people lying, and he already knew which half he trusted. The guild hall was a counter, a wall of contract tags glowing in their slots, and a dispatcher who did not look up.
"You're the 2 off the standby list?"
She said.
"Keswick Captain Berth 40. He's down 2 hands and he does not wait on rookies."
She pushed a single tag across the counter without checking either of their faces.
"There? You're salvagers now. Try to stay that way."
Trent took the tag like it was a medal. Dell took it like it was a map.
40's the long walk all the way out on the rim.
Dell said, easy and unbothered, already reading the deck plan off the little screen.
Come on, Rook, before he ships out with the both of us still standing here.
He was maybe 30, broad and unhurried, with the kind of face that made strangers tell him things. They'd signed on the same hour off the same bench, and somewhere in 3 days Dell had quietly become the man Trent checked with before he said something stupid. He didn't check often enough.
I did the Sims.
Trent said.
Top of my class. I'm not walking in there like a rook.
You're walking in there like a rook,
said Dell.
Everybody does. You just get to pick how loud.
Berth 40 held a ship that had been 3 ships before it, patched plating, mismatched welds, a spin section grafted on at a tired angle. An old hull kept breathing on parts robbed from 100 dead ones. Along the bow, the name had been stenciled once and then scoured to a ghost by years of grit. Trent tipped his head and got nothing off it, not one whole letter. He was still squinting at it when he ducked through the hatch, and a low structural pipe he had not been warned about caught him square across the forehead. He came through swearing, off balance, one boot coming down where a boot should not have gone.
"You'll want to mind your feet down here. I'm easy to miss,"
said a voice, clear and warm and unhurried, and Trent looked down at what he'd nearly flattened. A long, soft-bodied thing on a great many small legs sat tucked against the wall, a sleek translator fitted at its front where its senses were. It had a good voice, better than his if he was honest, which he wasn't.
Everyone hits the pipe,
Dell said, ducking it clean.
Only the second time's embarrassing.
Then the corridor filled, the way a doorway fills when something too big for it steps up, a scaled giant of a captain, 7 feet of unhurried muscle, watching them arrive with no expression Trent could read. "You're late," the captain said. "Get aboard." And that was all of it. He turned and was gone forward, and the words had landed like they'd been set down rather than spoken. The old lizard talks in receipts, Trent thought, and grinned, and followed. The flight cabin was a nest of controls with an insectoid pilot folded into the middle of it, half a dozen limbs moving across panels no two-handed man could have played at once. Trent, who could not stand a quiet, filled it.
Trent, top of my class at Meridian, fastest docking sims they'd logged in 4 years. You want a second set of hands-on approach? I'm your man.
The talking does not fly the ship,
The pilot said, flat as a printed page, not one limb pausing.
That's Remo.
Dell said.
His real name's a mouthful, nobody's landed yet. He flies her like a handheld clicker, so Remo.
Remo did not confirm it, and did not deny it, and did not look up. An older woman was crouched at an open panel further back, weathered and slow-handed, coaxing a stripped connector back into its seat with more patience than Trent had for anything.
You'll want to let that burn-in run a full shift before you trust it, hun.
She said, not to him exactly, just to the room.
Ain't no hurry worth a bad joint.
Timid, Trent decided, filing her under soft, and moved on before he learned her name.
Mind the pipe, cadet.
A dry voice said out of the walls themselves.
It's undefeated. Career record.
Trent turned a full circle looking for the mouth that went with it, and found none.
The boat's got a mouth on her.
The boat's got a mind.
Dell said.
Name of Cricket. You get used to it.
Cricket.
Trent said it slow, tasting it, and it fit a ratty little ship all chirp and no bite, spun up out of scavenged junk and named for the noise it made.
Cricket and me are gonna get along fine then.
Nobody corrected him. The old woman's mouth twitched and went still. The captain was already gone. Dell just let it ride, the way you let a rook keep a wrong idea that isn't hurting anyone yet.
Sublights, all of you.
Trent announced to the cabin, cheerful, spreading it around like he was doing them a favor.
Whole crew of sublights and a ship that talks back. My cut of the first haul, I clear more than the 4 of you put together.
The old woman didn't rise to it. Remo didn't either. The captain was a deck away and might as well have been a wall. Dell laughed, but it was a warmer laugh than the joke had earned, and he clapped Trent once on the shoulder as he steered him toward the bunks.
Sublights got old doing this. Rook,
He said.
that's the whole trick. Getting old at it.
He said it kindly, the way he said most things. He had a plan. Dell did one boat of his own someday, run right and run decent, a crew that came home. He'd told Trent about it their second night on the bench, like it was already half-built. Trent stowed his kit next to Dell's worn bag and figured he'd be running a better boat than this one inside 5 years. He was sure of it. He was sure of most things. 3 weeks under a steady burn does something to a crew, or it does nothing, and you find out which. The torch pushed a constant gravity up through the deck plates the whole way out, so that down was always toward the engines, and a man walked the ship's canted corridors like the floors of a house tipped gently on its end, which, under thrust, they were. The drive note never quit. It lived in the soles of the boots and the roots of the teeth until it stopped being a sound and became the shape of the quiet instead. Most of the crew slept straight through it. Trent learned to. He learned the ship the hard way, because that was the only way she taught. He hit the low pipe outside the galley twice more the first week, and Cricket kept the count aloud, and by the 4th strike announced it in the flat tone of a race result. He sheared a coolant fitting clean off muscling a joint that wanted coaxing, and spent an evening backing it out under Sable's hands, learning more from her in an hour than a year of school had shown him, though he'd have swallowed the wrench before saying so. He called them sublights again, once, at Sable's table, and Sable let the quiet do the correcting. Dell settled faster. By the 2nd week, the crew had folded him in the way you fold in a man you're glad to have. They were not good at this yet, but they were aboard, and they fit a little, and the ship had stopped feeling like a place they were only visiting. It was the captain who kept the ship's false nights, because his kind did not sleep and never had, and Trent, who could not stand a quiet any better than he could stand a locked door, took to sitting up with him at the boards.
So what's out where we're headed?
Trent said one watch, spinning the second chair around.
Is anybody worth worrying about?
The Iskar line runs close to it. Sarn didn't look over. The readouts ticked and washed his scaled face in slow green. Pack hunters.
The one thing in this dark that used to run down salvagers for the sport of it.
A talon tapped a point on the nav and left it there.
Used to. They've gone quiet along the whole border. Months now. No raids, no burns across the line.
So the scary neighbors moved out.
Trent spread his hands.
That's good news. Nothing out here but us and a payday.
Sarn watched the dark a while.
Warriors don't move out, boy. They go somewhere.
He said nothing after that, and Trent decided he didn't need him to. It was somewhere in the third week, over what passed for an evening meal, that Trent finally got the rest of his questions answered, whether he liked the answers or not. The galley held most of them, Del easy against the bulkhead, Remo eating one-handed at a pulled-up panel because his hands never left the boards for long, Ofa low against the warm baseboard where she liked to be, Sable with her dead little music box open on the table, coaxing at it between bites.
So this thing we're hauling back.
Trent set it around a mouthful, tipping his fork at the dark past the ports.
Some slab of dead metal, I figure. Big money to move a rock.
Couldn't tell you, hun.
Sable said, not looking up.
Nobody can. Till we're standing over it. Something the vanished made and left behind, that's all the tag ever says. Could be a lump of dead metal. Could be worth more in this whole ship.
She seated a gear, tested it, frowned.
They were here first, built everything you're impressed by, and a fair bit you couldn't survive looking at. Then ages back, all at once, gone. No war anybody's found, no bodies, just empty ships from one end of the sky to the other. We make our living picking their bones.
And somebody pays a fortune for a dead god's junk.
Trent turned it over like he didn't quite buy it.
The Illith. They hold the vanished holy.
She said it plain and went back to the puzzle. Down against the baseboard, Ofa spoke, clear and small.
I don't like the dead ships,
she said.
They're too quiet. Quiet like something is being quiet back at you.
And then she did a thing Trent hadn't seen her do. She stopped. All those small legs, all that restless low motion gone at once. She drew in on herself and held so still she might have been a thing bolted to the deck.
Settle, girl,
Sable said, gentle, not looking up from her gears.
You're all right.
Trent laughed. Not cruelly, he just laughed.
They're empty tombs, Ofa. Nobody home. That's the whole point.
Ofa said nothing, and slowly, a leg at a time, came unstuck, and Trent had already forgotten it.
Speaking of,
he tipped his head back at the walls, at the whole rattling ship around them.
Cricket. Strange name to hang on a boat. Fits her, though. All chirp and no bite.
The galley went briefly, oddly quiet, the quiet of people deciding who has to be the one to tell him.
Cricket's not the ship.
Sarn had come to stand in the hatch without anyone hearing him arrive.
Cricket's the mind, the voice in the walls.
Trent blinked.
Then what's the ship?
DeadLight.
He set the two words down the way he set down anything that mattered, complete and unhurried, and only the once. Trent made a face.
DeadLight? Cheerful. Who picks a name like that?
It's not what you think.
Sable set down her tools at last and looked at him for the first time like he might be worth the trouble of explaining to.
DeadLight's an old spacer's word. Look out there.
She tipped her head at the ports, at the wide, patient field of stars.
Half of what you're seeing isn't there anymore. Stars that burned out 1,000 years back, 10,000, and the light's only now getting here. You're not looking at the sky, hun. You're looking at its past. A whole heaven full of ghosts, still shining.
Trent looked out at the stars, and for once had nothing to say.
We live off dead things' light,
Sable said, and bent back over her puzzle.
Only fair we're honest about it.
The burn pushed on into the black, and the ghost light of 1,000 dead suns poured cold, and even through the ports the past of a sky too old and too far to know the little ship was under it. Trent sat with that a while and didn't fill it. The galley was warm. Outside it nothing was. 3 weeks and a day out from Colvane, the burn cut, and the ship fell weightless all at once, the long, steady push simply gone and down gone with it. So Trent's stomach floated up under his ribs and hung there. He grabbed a handhold he didn't need and pretended he hadn't. On the forward screens, the thing they had crossed all that dark to reach was resolving out of the black. It did not look like a ship. It looked like a piece of a world that had been torn loose and left to cool, a vanished hull so vast the eye kept trying to make a landscape of it, a black range of ridges and valleys that drank the starlight and gave nothing back. No lights on it, no markings, no scale a person could hold in the head. The longer Trent stared, the bigger it got, until he made himself look away. And clamped to its flank, small as a tick on the hide of something enormous, hung the Sparrow's dew. She was dark, not damaged dark, her running lights out, her ports unlit, hanging against the dead giant exactly as she must have hung for 6 weeks, waiting for someone to come and wonder what had become of her.
There she is,
said Remo, flat as ever, limbs walking the boards.
Hull docked clean, no breach, no scoring, no burn.
A pause.
Doesn't look like anything happened to her at all.
Something happened to her,
Sarn said. Remo brought them in soft and held the dead light off the derelict's flank 100 meters down from the little ship. They suited up in the cramped lock because the gap between the two hulls was 100 meters of hard vacuum and nothing kinder. Ofa's suit was a contraption all its own, a sealed, segmented shell over her long body, a dozen accordion sleeves for her legs, a clear blister at the front where her senses lived.
I hate this suit, and I hate the vacuum more,
she said, clear and precise, and climbed into it anyway, which was the one objection she allowed herself. Remo stayed with the ship. Cricket stayed everywhere. They crossed on tethers, hand over hand along the guide, and out there in the open there was no sound at all, only Trent's own breath loud in his helmet, and the small clicks of tools knocking his suit, everything else swallowed by the vacuum. The dead giant slid past under his boots, like the side of a mountain that fell away forever. The little ship grew until she filled the world. Her lock still answered. It cycled them through 2 at a time, and inside her lights woke amber at their motion, and her air read stale but good. Powered, breathing, alive in every way a ship is alive. Sable checked the reading twice before she cracked her visor, and the rest followed her lead. There was no weight in here either. They moved on the handholds, mag boots ticking at the deck. It was only the Sparrow's deuce crew that was gone. They found the first at the flight boards. A Vesk, like Remo, half risen from the rigger's chair, caught in the act of coming up out of it, its limbs still spread toward the console where they had been working. A cheap old translator was clipped to its carapace. It was not hurt. That was the thing Trent's mind kept snagging on and could not get past. No wound, no blood, no burn, no sign it had struggled. The creature had not fallen or fought. It had started to rise towards something 6 weeks ago, and simply stopped between one motion and the next, and had hung here in the amber quiet ever since. In front of it, the boards glowed a calm, untroubled green. Whatever had killed the rigger had not so much as flickered a light. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Trent, because the quiet was unbearable and he had never in his life let a silence stand, reached for the first thing that fit.
Bad air,
he said.
Had to be. Something in the scrubbers, they all just went to sleep and never...
Air's fine.
Sable had a hand near the console, not touching it, reading the calm green figures.
Air's been fine the whole time.
Then a seizure,
Trent said, the words coming faster.
A leak.
Trent.
Sarn did not raise his voice. He never had to, and the boys stopped. The captain looked at the dead rigger a moment longer than he needed to, and something moved behind the flat gold eyes and was set aside.
The manifest said 3 aboard, this is 1, the other 2 went inside.
He turned his head to the dark beyond the hull, to the wound in the derelict's flank, where the lost crew had cut their way in.
So we go inside. We don't leave anyone in this place.
Ofa had drawn in against the baseboard. She didn't argue, but she didn't come unstuck this time either. They sealed their visors and cycled back into the black and crossed the short gap to the breach, a tear in the great hull with no rivets and no seam any hand had cut, its edges smooth as poured glass and colder than the void at their backs. Sarn raised the anchor gun, sighted the hull a meter to the side of the opening, and fired. The hard point punched into the ancient hull and bit, the line paid out behind it, and drew taut when he set the tension, a straight, bright cord anchored to a dead god's ship. He clipped the crossing line to it and pulled on it with his whole weight, with the old hand, the left one, a plain mechanical replacement, scarred where it met the wrist. Trent had never asked how the first one went. On a boat like this you didn't have to. A line, a load, a fixture that held for everyone but the man it didn't. Sarn trusted no anchor he hadn't hung his own weight on, and he hung it on this one until he was sure.
"On my line,"
Sarn said,
"one at a time, lamps down to the low setting, no name spoken past the breach, and nothing powered that doesn't have to be."
He said each word complete and unhurried, the way he said anything that could get a man killed if it were misheard. Trent thought it was superstition dressed as a checklist. A graveyard was a graveyard, and the dead didn't care how loud you were, but he kept it behind his teeth.
He's kept crews breathing 200 years doing it his way,
Dell said low, close by his shoulder.
Humor the man costs you nothing.
He gave Trent the ghost of the old grin, and Trent let it go, and one at a time they went in. Inside, the derelict was a cathedral raised by something that had never heard of people. The corridor drew them up and inward, too tall, too wide, the lamps throwing little cones against walls that curved away into a dark that had weight to it. A thin cord ran along the deck ahead of them, anchored at intervals, a guideline laid down by hands that had not come back for it, leading in. Sarn followed it without a word, and the rest followed Sarn, and none of them said aloud that a guideline is meant for finding the way back out, and that this one had never once been used that way. The chamber opened without warning, corridor, and then sudden cavernous nothing, so vast the lamps found no far wall. Rank on rank of shapes stood in it, the vanished's leavings cold and nameless, and worth more than the ship that had carried them out here, and near a low plinth at the heart of it, the lamps found the other two, and held. They had been here 6 weeks, and in all that time they had not moved. One was an older man, heavy-set in a much-mended suit, caught a single step from the plinth and half-turned, one arm on its way up, reaching or warding, no way to tell. The other was young, barely more than a boy, and he stood at the plinth itself with one glove laid flat on the thing that sat there, and his helmet tipped down, as if he were listening to it. The light behind his visor had long since gone out.
Suits failed,
Trent said, grabbing for it the way he'd grabbed for the bad air.
They cracked. The air ran out.
Sable was already crouched by the older man, checking the seals along his arm and the little readout on his chest that still glowed faint and steady.
"Suit's whole,"
she said quietly.
"Air in the tank, charge in the cell. This one had hours left in him."
She looked at how he'd come to rest, not fallen, not crumpled, but caught, a step from the plinth with one arm rising.
"And a man whose air gives out don't die reachin' for somethin', hun. He dies clawin' at his own collar, hollerin' for anybody who'll come. These two never finished a motion, they just stopped."
Nobody had an answer to that, because there was no story in it that held together, no wound, no struggle, no reason. Down against the deck, Ofa had pressed herself flat and gone rigid, every leg tucked tight, as still as the two dead men. Her clear voice came thin and small over the link.
"I would like to leave,"
she said.
"I would like all of us to leave. Now, and quickly."
No one answered her, and she did not say it twice.
"Don't touch them,"
Sarn said very quietly.
"Don't touch anything you don't have to get the reading, and we go."
And on the plinth, beneath the boys' stilled glove, the thing they had crossed 3 weeks of dark to fetch sat waiting, and deep inside it a thread of gold light stirred slow dimming, brightening, dimming again, the only warm thing in all that cold. They lifted the boy's glove clear of it. Sarn did 2 fingers, gentle as lifting a sleeping child's hand off a table, and set the dead boy back a pace so the crew could work. The cold held everything the way it had held it for 6 weeks. There was no sound in the chamber but Trent's own breathing in his helmet, and when someone moved, the small tick of a mag boot finding the deck. The suits fought the cold and did not win. Behind every visor a face was a smear of readout glow and nothing more. The relic gave off the only light in that place that hadn't come off their lamps. Not bright, a thread of gold lay deep inside a shape the eye kept wanting to follow and never finished following, a curve that seemed poured to fit a hand that had never been human, and it moved. It dimmed and brightened and dimmed again, slow and even the way a thing breathes in its sleep. Trent stood over it and understood with a lurch he did not care for exactly why the boy at his elbow had reached out to lay a glove on it. He wanted to himself. His own hand had come half up before he knew it.
I wouldn't, hun.
Sable said, though he hadn't quite moved, and he put the hand down. She came to it the way she came to everything, slow and cautious with her body, and something else entirely behind the eyes. She did not touch it. She crouched a careful arm's length off, unshipped her reader, and began to take the measure of the thing without laying a finger anywhere near it, reading the light, reading the shape, coaxing numbers out of it the way she'd coax a seized gear, patient and murmuring, half to the relic and half to herself.
That's close enough.
Sarn's voice came flat and low over the link, and he did not spend her name on it. Not past the breach.
I hear you.
She said. She didn't stop.
I'm not touching it. I'm just looking.
And she went on looking, the way a starving woman looks at bread behind glass, all that hunger kept very carefully on its leash, and no intention of walking away from it. Down against the deck, Ofa had gone past warning and into the stillness that was the most she had in her. She lay flat to the plating, rigid, drawn in tight, and her clear voice came thin and small.
It's a little awake,
she said.
Please, please, let's not.
Then she said nothing more because there was nothing left past that, and stillness was where she went when there was nothing left. Nobody answered her. Sarn and Del bent to the plinth and began rigging a harness around the whole of it to lift it free and carry it out entire the way the Elith paid for. Trent held the lights and watched Sable work. Somewhere in there his own breathing had gone shallow, without his deciding it. He was waiting for the thread of gold to stop mid-breath, for the cold at his back to shift, for something in all that huge quiet to finally move. His glove tightened on the lamp. He waited. Nothing came. The reader chimed in Sable's ears, soft and ordinary as a kitchen timer. She went still over it, the murmuring stopped, and her gloved hands hung a moment above the reader without moving, and whatever crossed her stayed behind the blank glow of her visor where Trent couldn't read it. The light kept breathing. The dead kept their posts. Whatever Trent had felt gathering in the dark had either never been there at all, or had looked at the five of them and found them beneath its notice and gone back to sleep, and there was no way to tell which. There would never be any way to tell which.
Reed's cold,
Sable said at last, and her voice was steady, and only Trent was close enough to hear the thing under the steadiness that wasn't fear.
Whatever it's doing in there, it's doing it slow, and it's doing it quiet, and it don't care that we're here.
She stowed the reader.
Rig it, and let's carry it home.
They got to work, all of them, glad of the work. And it was while the others were hauling the harness, Snug, Sarn, and Del bent to the straps, Trent turning to brace the lights, that Sable, quite quietly, reached down and picked something up off the floor at the plinth's base. A shard. A broken piece of something older than the dead boy's whole species, no bigger than a thumb, dull and dark and dead to the eye. She turned it once in her glove. She looked at it a moment. Then, without a word and without a flicker, she slipped it into a pouch at her hip and went back to the harness as though nothing at all had passed between her and the floor of that place. And no one saw her do it but the two dead men, who kept her secret the way they kept their own.
Bring it up, gentle,
Sarn said.
We carry it out, we carry them out, and we go home.
The great relic came up off its plinth slow and heavy on the lines, its thread of gold light breathing on, unbothered into the dark, and at Sable's hip, in a closed pouch against a suit that let no light in or out, a smaller dark nothing rode along and gave no sign of anything at all. Off the plinth it was theirs, and it was a monster to move, a mass the size of a man, cold and dense and weightless, and yet full of its own dead momentum, so that it took Sarn and Dell both on the lines to start it drifting down the throat of the derelict, and everything the two of them had to check it again. Still hard vacuum, still no sound but their own breathing and the tick of Magboot's hunting purchase on the strange deck. Every face behind its visor just a smudge of glow. They followed the lost crew's guideline back toward the far gray coin of the breach, the great cold shape sliding between them on its harness like a sleeping thing led on a leash. Ofa went with them, low and silent, pressed flat to the deck, wedging herself into the shadow of the relic wherever the corridor led her. She had said her piece in the chamber once and clearly, and no one had moved for it, and so she said nothing now. She only kept close and kept still and endured the way out. After all that careful warning, her silence had a weight to it, and it lay on Trent worse than any word she could have spent. It happened at the narrow place. The corridor pinched down to a throat where two great ribs of the hull came near to meeting, and the relic would only go through on an angle, slow, everyone's hands on it. They had run the haul line through an old fixture on the hull above the gap, a hard point the Vanished themselves had set there to bear loads no one living could name, so they could ease the mast down through the pinch under control. Dell was on the low side, guiding it, his gloves flat to the cold flank of the thing, calling the turn.
"Bring it left,"
he said.
"Left."
The old fixture let go. It made no sound, nothing there made sound. One instant the line was taut and the relic was a weight under control easing through the gap. The next the line was slack and the relic was simply moving, all those tons of dead momentum swinging free with nothing left to hold them, and Dell was on the low side. And there was nowhere for Dell to go. Trent saw it. He had time to shout and no time at all to do anything else. The relic came against Dell and the bulkhead in the same slow, unhurried instant, and it did not so much strike him as close on him, the way a heavy door swings shut. Then it rocked gently back on the slack line and was still, and Dell was not moving. And the readout on his chest that had glowed faint and steady a breath before was dark. For a moment nobody moved, then all of them moved at once. They got the relic off him. It took every one of them, and it took far too long, and it changed nothing at all, because Dell had been gone from the instant it touched him. Trent ended up on his knees in the dark with his gloves on the man he had known for 3 whole weeks. The easy one, the useful one, the one who'd told him to look at the welds and not the paint, and none of it would come together into anything he could hold in his head. It had been an old anchor, and a heavy load, and a narrow place. That was all. No wound that made no sense, no gold light, no room holding its breath, just a fixture older than his whole species that had chosen this minute to fail, and a mass that didn't care, and the oldest way there is to die on a salvage run. The dark hadn't reached for Dell. It had only, as it always had, not cared whether he lived. Trent, who had never once in his life let a silence stand, knelt in the middle of the largest one he had ever met, and had nothing to put into it. They did the grim, competent thing, and they did most of it without a word. They carried the dead out the way they had come in, Dell first, and then the two from the chamber, and last the rigger, lifted at last out of the chair it had half risen from 6 weeks before, hand over hand across the black, the dead star light pouring cold over all of it, out through the wound in the hull to the ship that waited with her warm amber lights. Behind them the derelict kept its dark and its silence, exactly as it had for 6 weeks, exactly as it would for 1,000 years. The relic came too, cold and heavy and breathing its slow gold thread, worth every credit it had cost. There was nowhere out here to bury anyone, so they stowed the 4 of them in the cold hold and rigged the Sparrows due to tow behind on a long line. Then Remo lit the torch, and down came back, a long building weight toward the engines, one steady gravity, the ship leaning her nose for home. On the flight deck Dell's crash seat sat empty, still webbed the way he'd left it, and nobody moved to strap it down. For 2 days the burn was very quiet. It was Sable who said it. On the 3rd, not unkindly, just setting a fact on the table the way she set out the pieces of a broken thing.
We'll want another hand next run out. Hall's full of 'em. Sarn can take his pick before we ship again.
Something in Trent went up quick and hot before he'd thought about it at all.
We don't need anybody,
he said.
I can carry it, Dell's board and mine both. I'm strong, I'm quick, I'll pull the doubles.
He heard how it sounded and couldn't stop, because stopping was not a thing Trent had ever learned.
You won't even feel the difference.
Nobody argued with him. That was the part he would remember. Sarn didn't look up from the boards. Sable went back to her little machine in the walls. Cricket said nothing at all, which from Cricket was its own kind of answer. They let the boy pick up the thing that was plainly too heavy for him, because right then he needed to believe he could. Somewhere in those quiet days, Trent went back to the bunks and took Dell's worn kit bag, the same one Dell had carried into the guild hall the day they signed on 3 weeks and a whole life ago, and stowed it in with his own gear. He didn't say why, and nobody asked. It just went where his things went, and it stayed there. Ofa had gone silent somewhere in the belly of the dead ship, and she stayed silent now. No one asked her what she had felt in there. No one had the heart, and maybe no one wanted the answer. On the 5th day of the burn, with the deck still pushing its one steady gravity toward the engines, the bulletin came over the guild band routine traffic, the kind that scrolls past 100 times a run. Sarn had it low. Trent wasn't listening until a few of the words snagged on something.
Crew reporting a derelict off the old Iskar line.
The bored voice read, working down a list.
Warship adrift, no distress. All hands aboard found deceased, no cause determined. Guild advises crews in the sector to log and report.
The band clicked on to docking schedules and was gone. Nobody on the flight deck said a word. Sarn had it low, and no one moved to turn it up. Maybe none of them had truly heard it. Maybe they had heard and had nothing left in them to make of it, not tonight, not with Dell in the cold hold behind them. Trent looked at the empty seat and let it pass. The way you let a thing pass when you're 28 and grieving and still half sure the universe is mostly kind. The relic breathed its slow gold light in the hold, and the burn carried them home. Colvane took them back the way it took everyone back, without ceremony, without much noticing, the great ring turning against the dark as it always had. A clerk logged the relic and weighed it, and named a number the Elith would pay that should have meant something and didn't. Another clerk logged the dead. The 3 off the Sparrow's due, cause undetermined, filed under equipment failure, pending a review that would never come. And Dell, accident, salvage, load shift, a line as old as the trade itself. There was a box on the form for every part of it. None of the boxes asked the only question worth asking, so no one had to try to answer it. Late that night, Trent sat alone on the flight deck with the empty seat beside him, and the ship spoke low out of the walls.
He was one of the good ones.
Cricket said.
I keep a list, it's short, and it just got shorter, and I would have preferred it didn't.
A pause.
Go to sleep, Trent. You'll want to be strong tomorrow. You've decided to be strong.
Trent didn't answer and didn't sleep. He sat a while with the empty seat and looked out at the stars, all that patient, pouring light, so much of it thrown by suns that weren't there anymore, a whole sky of the already gone still shining as though nothing had ever happened to them. 3 weeks ago he wouldn't have known to see it that way. He knew now. Down the ship, in the dark of her own cabin, Sable could not sleep either. She took the shard out and held it in the palm of her hand, dull, dark, no bigger than a thumb, a dead little nothing she had carried a long way home. She turned it once, turned it again. And deep inside it, so faint she might have dreamed it, so faint she leaned close to be sure, a thread of light stirred, slow and gold and patient. The same light that had breathed in the great relic under a dead boy's hand. The same light that breathed even now in the cold hold below her. It began very quietly to shine. Sable did not flinch, she did not put it down. She brought it closer, all that careful hunger back off its leash, and looked at the little waking light the way she had looked at its big brother in the belly of the dead ship, and she smiled, small and to herself, the way she smiled at a seized gear that had just begun to give.
Well,
She murmured to it.
aren't you something?
She wrapped it and hid it away and told no one. Below her, in the hold, the great relic breathed its slow gold light into the dark. And 2 decks up, closed in one woman's hand, a second small light breathed back.